The air inside the auction hall was thick with heat and noise. Strange lights flashed across the crowd. Hundreds of aliens from different systems shouted and laughed as the next item was dragged onto the platform. She was small but wild. The alien girl's wrists were bound in glowing cuffs. Her silver hair was dirty and tangled. Her body covered in bruises the guards pushed her forward. She growled like an animal, eyes flashing orange. The crowd leaned back. The auctioneer raised his voice. This one is dangerous, uncontrollable, raised in the fire colonies. She has killed 3 handlers. Opening bid starts low 100 credits. No one spoke. Silence swept over the room. Buyers looked at each other, then back at the girl. Some laughed. Others shook their heads. One merchant whispered, "Not worth the risk. She'll rip your throat out while you sleep." But the girl didn't look afraid. She stood tall, breathing hard, her eyes locked on the auctioneer. When he stepped closer, she snapped her chains forward like a whip. Sparks flew. The auctioneer jumped back, nearly falling over. The guards yanked her down. "I warned you," the auctioneer said, wiping his face. "She is fire, wild and deadly. Sold as is. Final chance. Anyone brave enough to take her." Still no bids. And then he stood at the back of the hall. A human rose from his seat, tall, quiet, with a long coat and a tired face. His hair was dark, his hands scarred. He didn't speak. He just raised one finger. The crowd gasped. "You?" The auctioneer blinked. "A human? Do you understand what she is?" The man nodded. Double quotes. "Final offer," the auctioneer said. "Sold." The room exploded with noise. Aliens laughed, cheered, and shook their heads. One said, "He's crazy. She'll kill him by morning." Another whispered, "He's not walking out of that ship alive." The man didn't react. He stepped forward, took the chain, and looked at the girl. Their eyes met. Hers were burning, furious, ready to strike, but his were calm, not afraid, not mocking, just understanding. The guards let go. The girl didn't move. She watched him for a long moment. The entire room waited, but nothing happened. He let her out slowly, not pulling, not forcing. She followed, silent. As the heavy doors closed behind them, one voice in the crowd said quietly, "He just bought his death." But outside, under the stars, the man finally spoke. "My name is Yulin. You don't have to be afraid anymore." The girl didn't answer. She just turned her head and looked up at the stars. The ship hummed quietly as it drifted through the dark stretch of space. Inside, soft lights glowed along metal walls. In one small cabin, the alien girl sat on the floor, chained no longer, but still tense like a cage storm. Ellen had given her food, clean clothes watered out in silence. He didn't ask her name. He didn't order her round. He just pointed to the soft bunk and then sat down across the room, reading a data pad. She didn't sleep. She didn't eat. She waited. Her eyes scanned the room for weapons. Her fingers touched the edge of a broken plate he'd left on the floor. Earlier, sharp enough, fast enough. The moment came in the deep night cycle. Yin lay asleep on the bunk, one arm over his chest, the soft light from the hallway casting a glow on his face. The girl rose without a sound. Her feet padded across the cold floor. She moved like a ghost. The broken plate was in her hand. Then she stood over him, heart racing. Her hand lifted, the shard gleamed, and then she saw it. A photo tucked into the corner of the wall. A little girl, human smiling wide, arms, wrapped around Jolin's neck. He looked different in the photo, younger alive. Below the photo were 3 words, burned into the metal, in memory of Mia. The alien girl's hand began to shake. The shark dropped to the floor with a soft clink. Jay ain't opened his eyes. He didn't move, didn't speak, just looked at her. Her breath caught in her throat for the first time. Her face showed more than rage. It showed confusion, fear, sorrow. She backed away slowly, then curled into the corner like a wounded animal. At JALN set up. "You saw Mia," he said softly. "She was my daughter. She died 2 years ago. Sickness. Nothing I could fight." The girl didn't answer. "I bought you," he said, "but not to keep you. I just couldn't let them chain you again." Hours passed. She didn't sleep. Neither did he. By the next day, she was still, watching him. Her eyes followed his every move. He cooked, cleaned the ship, fixed a loose circuit panel. Never spoke unless needed, never showed fear. That night, Yin left the door unlocked on purpose. He watched the security feed from the bridge, saw her standing in the hallway for an hour, one hand on the airlock button, one step from freedom, but she didn't press it. She turned back. He smiled to himself. Later, while working on the engine, Yolan found her beside him. She picked up a tool and held it out. He took it. "Thanks," he said. She nodded. It was a first time she'd made a choice. Not out of fear, not out of survival, but trust. Still, she didn't speak. Not yet, but something had changed. Deep in her chest beneath layers of scars and rage. A spark had lit. Not fire. Something older. Something forgotten. Hope. What Yolan didn't know. What she hadn't told anyone was that she hadn't always been like this. Long ago, on a planet that no longer had a name, she had once worn armor made of silver and light. She had stood at the gates of a palace made of crystal flame. She had once been called Guardian until they betrayed her until they sold her. And now here she was not chained, but still unsure if she was free. As the ship flew deeper into uncharted space, the girl stood in the control room beside Yen. They didn't speak. They just stared at the stars together. And in that silent moment, something passed between them. Not words. Not commands. Just understanding. He had seen her not as a weapon, but as a person. And for the first time since her world fell, she wondered, what if she was more than what they called her? Yen didn't try to teach her. He just lived. Day by day, the ship moved across quiet galaxies, far from patrols, far from war zones. Yolan fixed wires, checked maps, brewed his bitter tea, and the alien girl followed like a shadow at first. But then like a heartbeat, she didn't speak. Not a word. But she listened. She studied every gesture, every sound. Yolan would point at something and say the name. Door, fire, ship, sleep, friend. Sometimes he would pause at old memories and just say mad. Her name stayed on his lips like a prayer. The girl mimicked his words softly when he wasn't looking, practicing alone in the engine bay or near the soft hum of the oxygen plant. He never forced her. He simply waited. That on the 7th day, Yolan found her in the kitchen trying to slice fruit with a knife. She was gripping it the wrong way. He laughed gently, not mocking. He took her hand, showed her how to hold it, then stepped back. She didn't pull away. That night, she sat with him at the table that night across the room, not in the shadows, that at his side. He gave her a name. Phyrexia, he said, "That's what they called you, right?" She looked up, surprised, cautious. He continued, "I heard the traitors whispering. Said you were Fireburn, one of the flame clans from the outer systems." Her hands curled into fists. They called, "You Uncontrollable, but I think you were a soldier, a protector, weren't you?" She stared at him for a long moment, then gave the smallest nod. JAL, and nodded, to figured. The next few days, she began helping. She rewired part of the ship. Without being asked, cleaned a gun she'd never been taught to use. She didn't sleep much, but now it wasn't fear. It was something else. Vigilance. Jaylene watched her with a kind of wonder. Whatever had been broken in her, it wasn't gone, but it was healing. Then came the storm. A pulse signal hit the ship's radar pirates, fast and cruel. A swarm of 3 rusted ships began circling Jalen's freighter. He tried evasive maneuvers, but they were too quick. They boarded. Jane grabbed a rifle. "Stay here," he told her. But when the door burst open and the first pirate aimed a plasma rifle at his head, Xia moved like a ghost, silent, fast, brutal. She took down the first pirate with a spinning kick, then ripped the rifle from his hand. The second never even had time to scream. She slammed his helmet into the wall and threw him out the airlock. The third fled. Yen stood, frozen. "You saved me," he said. She stared at him, breathing hard, not from rage, but from memory. She hadn't fought like that in years. Jen lowered his rifle. "I think I owe you. Dinner." A faint flicker of something passed her face. Not a smile, but maybe its shadow. After the pirates left, Phyrexia didn't go back to the shadows. She sat beside Yolan during meals. She helped him navigate asteroid belts. She even repaired the old training drone he hadn't used since Mia died. One evening as stars swirled outside the viewing deck, Yolan placed a small device in front of her. It was a translator. Old, slightly broken. "You can try to talk," he said. "Or not. Your choice." She picked it up, fingers trembling. Then she whispered one word. "Friend." Den's chest tightened. "Yes," he said softly. "Friend." That night, he told her everything about his lost daughter, his years in war, the mistake he made that led to Mia's illness, how he left the colonies, because he couldn't live with the silence anymore. Phyrexia listened, and as he spoke, something cracked deep inside her, because she too had been silent for far too long, because she too had lost everything. What Yulin didn't know, what she still couldn't say, was that long before she was called dangerous, she had been the personal guardian of the Flame Crown's only heir, a child she had failed to protect. And now, as she watched him stare into space, she wondered if fate had given her another chance to protect again. Not out of duty, but out of choice. The peace didn't last. To weeks after the pirate attack, Yen noticed a strange transmission echoing through deep space. Channels. It was encrypted, but not well. Someone was looking for something or someone, and then the message came. Bounty alert target designation Fireburn Uni Threxia Volter Last of the Flame Gar value 20,000 credits. Olivia. Jalen stared at the message for a long time. He didn't tell her right away, but Threxia already knew. She had seen the bounty networks light up. She had felt the shift in the air. The galaxy had remembered her name, and now it wanted her cage again. That evening, she stood in the ship's loading bay, staring at the stars, her fists clenched. Yolan walked up slowly and handed her the datapad. "They know who you are," he said. She didn't answer. He leaned against the wall beside her. "You want to run?" She shook her head. "You want to hide again?" She shook her head. "Then we fight," he said simply. She turned her face to him. Her voice was quiet. "They will come. All of them for you, too." He smiled. "Let them." The next attack came fast. 3 bounty ships dropped out of warp just outside the mining belt. Jalen's freighter was refueling near. No warning, no chatter, just guns. Lasers streaked past the hull. The ship rocked. Jen single quotes, S crew small and loyal. Scrambled to respond, but Morel was cracking on the lower deck. One of the engineers, a young man named Holic, snapped. "She's the reason we're being hunted," he yelled. "She's not worth dying for." Phyrexia stood silently at the corner. Holic turned toward her, trembling. "You hear me? You're a curse. You'll get us all killed." Phyrexia stepped forward. Not fast, not angry. Just present. Her eyes met his. And in a voice as steady as steel, she said, "Then I will leave." But before anyone could speak, Yolan walked in. "No," he said. No one leaves. He looked around the room. You all know me. I've flown with you for 5 years. I've paid your debts. I've fixed your homes. This woman saved my life. She didn't ask to be hunted. He turned to Threxia. You want to leave? I won't stop you, but not because of fear. Thraxia lowered her eyes. I will stay, she whispered. Dohelike turned and stormed out, but no one else did. Yolen plotted a course to a shadow moon deep in neutral space. No law, no government, no questions. An old friend ran an outpost there. Maybe they could by time find answers, get repairs. But as soon as they landed, Threxia froze. Her eyes scanned the crowd. She recognized faces, not friends. SLAVRS. The same ones who had once dragged her through the sands of Ishkar Prime. Her hand instinctively reached for her hidden blade. We need to leave, she whispered, but it was too late. They had seen her. Within minutes, the entire outpost was buzzing. Whispers, data pings. Signal she's here. A price that high doesn't. Stay quiet. At JA and single quotes as contact, an old smuggler named Bellin met them behind a storage tower. You've got hours, Bellin warned. Maybe less. They're coming. Yen frowned. Can you help us out? Bellin sighed. You saved me. Once, Yulin. But this is suicide. Threxia looked at the map Bellin handed. Them. Her eyes narrowed. There's a launch gate under the market dome. She said, they will bottleneck us there. Yolen raised an eyebrow. You have a plan. I will walk in, she said. Alone. Yen blinked. They'll capture you. They will try. That evening as the twin moons rose over the dome, a silent alert swept across the outpost. Target sighted. Threxia walked into the center of the market. Unarmed. Alone. The slavers surrounded her. Guns. Raised. But she didn't flinch. She held her head high, eyes burning. You remember me, she said. I remember you, the crowd murmured. Some laughed. The leader stepped forward. You're worth more in chains than dead. Thraxia spoke. Ancient words. The ground trembled. A hidden beacon pulsed once, then twice, and across the outpost hidden. Rebels, fire-burned survivors, and forgotten allies who had once served the Flame Guard woke. Within seconds, chaos erupted. Guns fired. Ships exploded, and Threxia moved like wind through fire. She disarmed 6 men with bare hands. Shattered helmets, redirected laser bolts with nothing but speed and instinct. Above Yulin and his crew flew, the freighter low over the dome. The ramp opened. Jump, he shouted. Threxia ran, leapt, and he caught her hand. As they flew away from the burning outpost, Yulin sat beside her, his arm bruised, his face bloodied. You're really something, he said. She didn't answer right away. Then quietly, she whispered, they call me a weapon. He looked at her. But you're not. Her voice trembled. Then what am I? Yulin smiled. You're free. They didn't speak for a long time after the escape. The ship drifted in quiet space. Systems low. Fuel even lower. Silence heavy. Bruises were cleaned. Wounds stitched. The crew rested, but not Threxia. She stood alone in the observation deck, staring into the stars. They whispered to her. Memories came like broken dreams. A throne room of fire and glass. A child's laughter echoing in golden halls. A final scream as a betrayal came, and then the chains, always the chains. Jen watched her from the hallway. He didn't interrupt. He had learned by now when to give space, when to step in. That night, he placed an old bottle of flame fruit nectar on the table. Rare, expensive, unopened since Mia passed. Threxia saw it and tilted her head. Elian poured the small glasses. Celebration, he said softly. She sat, slowly, her face unreadable. For what? She asked. He smiled. You lived. She looked down at the glowing liquid, then lifted the glass to her lips. It burned, but she didn't flinch. Later, while checking the NAV systems, Yolan found something unusual, a signal, bouncing weakly through a distant asteroid field encrypted in a very old language, not galactic common, not trade code. No, this was something older. He showed it to Threxia. Her face went palia. Where did you get this? She asked. It was just there, he said. Been on repeat for years. She stepped closer, her eyes scanning the symbols. Then softly she said as a flame guard beacon. Yulin frowned. Your people, my oath, she whispered. Then stood up and turned to him. I need to tell you who I am. He waited. She took a breath and said her name in full. I am Threxia Valter, daughter of General Orion Valter, sworn blade of the flame, guard, protector of the Phoenix line. Yolan blinked. The words hit like thunder. You were royal guard, not just guard, she said. I was shield to the air. She was only 7 when they came. My blade was broken. My oath failed. Her voice cracked. They captured me, sold me, erased my name. She looked at Yolan, eyes full of fire and pain. I was meant to die in chains. But Yolan shook his head. No, you were meant to live, to fight again. She lowered her eyes. The signal, it comes from our old temple. If it still works, it holds the last flame memory. The truth. He leaned forward. Then we go. The journey to the Phoenix Temple took 3 days through an asteroid belt filled with gravity tears, through a dead zone where no light moved. Phyrexia guided them, her voice steady, her hands firm. And when they finally arrived, the sight stopped even Jalen's breath. The temple floated in silence, carved into a massive asteroid, shaped like a bird's wing. Golden statues guarded the entrance. Ancient fire symbols still glowed. On the outer stone that Jeline landed the ship in a hollow dock. The crew waited behind. Only he and Threxia entered. Inside, the air was still thick with dust and time, but the firestones lit as she passed. Recognizing her, accepting her. Return. They reached the main chamber. At the center stood a pedestal with a glowing orb, the flame memory. This is it, she whispered. Every oath, every truth, every betrayal recorded here. She stepped forward, placed her palm on the orb, and light exploded. Images filled the room. Phyrexia as a child, training with the flame guard. Her father handing her the sword of oaths. The royal family laughing. Then the betrayal. Ambassadors from the Galactic Council walking into the palace and drawing weapons. The guards falling. One by one. Phyrexia screaming. The little princess hiding. Then darkness. When the light faded, Yen was on one knee, overwhelmed. Phyrexia stood tall. Tears rolled down her face. Now they know, she said. Now the galaxy will remember. But the orb pulsed again. One last message appeared. Code confirmed. Flame Guard Alpha Protocol unlocked. A small panel opened beside the pedestal. Inside a blade long, curved, pulsing with orange light. The Phoenix blade, Threxia whispered. The last one. She held it carefully. It hummed in her hand. Alive, waiting. Ellen stepped forward. What now? She looked at him. We gather those who remember, and then we make them regret. Thinking I was broken. He smiled. You're not broken. She looked at him, then down, at the blade. No, she said. I'm fire. The stars were no longer quiet after the flame memory awakened. Word spread fast, whispers across forgotten spaceports, secret war channels, and encrypted rebel lines. That she lives. Phyrexia Valter has returned. Some laughed, some trembled, but many remembered. And they came. Not in grand fleets, not in banners and songs. They came as shadows, as whispers, as the last embers of an old fire. An exiled commander who once trained Flame Guard recruits a pilot with a scar down her cheek who had watched her captain fall. an old woman who once lit the sacred flame in the palace garden. They came with broken ships, cracked armor, and nothing left to lose, and they followed Phyrexia. Yolen stood beside her in the war chamber of the hidden moon base. They had taken over. The maps hovered in the air. Enemy supply lines, council outposts calm. Towers, targets. He had never led a war, but he knew strategy. Phyrexia pointed at one sector of fortress where slaves were still traded. We hit them here, she said, not just to destroy, but to free. They'll expect an army, warned. They'll get one, she answered. We don't have enough ships. We don't need ships. She said, we need belief. 2 days later, they moved. A handful of freighters, half-painted, barely armed, disguised as merchants. They slipped through defense lines and landed just outside the fortress walls. Inside, thousands of captives waited in chains, including many from Phyrexia's world. People do. The plan was simple. She would walk in alone. Again, as the gates opened, the guards laughed. They didn't see a warrior. They saw a woman in a long cloak. No weapon, no fear. The commander stepped forward you again. She said nothing. He smiled. You're worth more dead now. They've put a new bounty on your head. Phyrexia lifted her eyes, then collected. She whispered before he could react. Her hand flicked. The phoenix blade dropped from her sleeve alive with orange flame. She moved like lightning. The first 3 guards fell. Before they even shouted. Arms blared. Outside the walls, Yolen and the rebels stormed the outer perimeter. Explosions lit the night. Slaves broke free, picking up fallen rifles. Phyrexia made her way to the central tower where the control system for the slave collars was stored. The hallway was full of guards. But Phyrexia didn't slow. She didn't swing. Wildly, she danced. Every step was a memory. Every strike aim. Every enemy she struck down carried the face of someone who had laughed at her chains. Yolen reached the tower with 2 rebel squads. They found Phyrexia, standing over the main console, covered in bruises and smoke, blade still, glowing. She nodded once. Do it, she said. Yolen entered the override code. All across the fortress, collars opened, chains dropped. A cry rose not of pain. But freedom. They left nothing behind. Do knowest lava VRS, and oh no. System. Only a message burned into the walls of the fortress. A simple symbol, the mark of the flame guard, and beneath it, 3 words in common tongue. We are back on the moon base. The rebels celebrated, but Phyrexia sat alone, sharpening her blade, staring at the stars. Jen joined her. You did it, he said. She didn't smile. This was only one. He nodded. I know. They'll hit us harder now. I know. She looked at him. You don't have to stay. He raised an eyebrow. You freed me, he said. Now I choose, and I choose this. She looked down. You're not a soldier. He smiled. Faintly. No, but I'm learning. They sat in silence. Then a new signal appeared on the main console from the Galactic Council. An official broadcast. Face appeared cold, clean, smiling. To the traitor. Phyrexia Volter and her human terrorist. You are enemies of peace. Surrender or be erased. We come for you next. Phyrexia rose. Let them come. Her eyes glowed like coals. The fire is awake now. They came like a storm. 5 council warships surrounded the moon base. Their weapons glowed with fire and metal. The stars above turned red with warning lights. No chance to escape. No time to hide. Inside the base. Yolen stood on the command deck beside Phyrexia. The crew around them moved fast, relaying messages, checking shields, preparing for what felt like the end. Phyrexia stared at the enemy fleet without blinking. They brought everything. Yen said, Good. Phyrexia answered. Then they will have nothing left. The base's defenses were weak. Old turrets, low power, broken shields. But the rebels weren't afraid. They had Threxia, and they had something more. The hope. The council broadcast came again this time. With a live feed, the face of Admiral Corden appeared, smug and cold. Threxia. Walter. He said, surrender now. We will spare your human. You can die alone. Threxia stepped forward. No mick, no speech. Just one gesture. She raised her blade and lit it in front of the camera. A line of flame, a symbol of rebellion. Jellin leaned in toward the screen. Come and try. The battle began. The council fired first. A wave of plasma missiles struck the base. Explosions rocked the walls. Systems sparked. One hangar collapsed. Yolen ordered emergency shields to max rebels' return fire, hitting one enemy cruiser in the engine, but they were outmatched. Fraxia led the ground forces. She moved through smoke and debris, saving wounded, giving orders, pushing fighters to hold the front gate. And then she vanished. Jay ailed and noticed her absence. He ran to the central chamber. The flame. Memory orb was glowing again. She stood before it, arms spread wide, blade, floating in the air. Fire symbols burned on the floor. Ancient energy filled the room. What were you doing? He shouted. She turned to him, eyes glowing bright orange. There's one power left, she said. The fire burn final right. What does it do? It ends a war. Yolen stepped closer. You mean it kills them? No. She said it shows them the truth. Every truth, their crimes. Our pain, our fire, the temple shook. But the cost, she started to say. That Jen grabbed her hand. Don't. Her voice cracked. If I do this, I don't. Come back. He stared at her. There has to be another way. This is the only way. She whispered. This ends with truth, not blood. Tears slid down her cheeks. I was trained to give my life for the flame. Yolen shook his head. You're more than a weapon now. You're more than fire. Then, what am I? He looked at her with aching eyes. You're someone I can't lose. Outside, the council flagship began, charging its main cannon. One blast would destroy the base completely. Jen saw the countdown. 5 seconds. He looked back at Trexia and made his choice. He stepped forward, placed his hand on the flame or beside hers. Then we do this. Together, she gasped. You'll die. Maybe, he said. But if I do at least, it means something. The fire roared. Light swallowed the room. Every ship, every soldier, every rebel in council. Agent saw the same vision. The betrayal of the Flame Guard. The chained children. The fires of conquest. The slaver's laughter. And then the human. J.A. Lend, choosing to burn. Not for power, but for her. For truth. The cannon never fired. The flagship engines died. Crew collapsed in. Silence. Across the fleet. Chaos turned to stillness. And then the fleet turned and left on the moon base. Yolen opened his eyes. Fraxia lay beside him, barely, breathing. He picked her up in his arms, carried her out of the temple as smoke cleared and the sun rose over broken stone. The rebels stood waiting, silent, watching Jen placed her on the ground. Her eyes fluttered open. Did we win? She whispered. Yes, he said, softly. She looked at him. We? He smiled. You and me, the human and the fire burn. Weeks later, they stood together in the rebuilt garden of the temple, not as fugitives, but as founders. New Flame Guard swore oaths. Not for war. But for peace. Children laughed in the halls. Again. And across the galaxy, her name was no longer cursed. Threxia Walter, guardian, liberator, legend, and beside her and Ryder, the man who believed. And every time someone asked what started it all, she would answer with a quiet smile. He didn't see a weapon.